Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Founders Week YQG. I'm Shreya Sheth. I am the manager of programs and events with WEtech Alliance. So this event is all about bringing together entrepreneurs, startups, innovators, change makers, entrepreneurial support organization, local leaders, and community. Our goal for this week is to educate, connect, and build momentum and opportunity around our region's startup community. So while this event is virtual, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. We are grateful to work, learn, and live in this area. This week would not have been made possible without our generous sponsors. I would like to thank the Province of Ontario, the St. Clair College Alumni Association, the Job Shop, Libro Credit Union, Workforce WindsorEssex, Baker Tilly Windsor LLP, Alpha Core Group, Venturit, EPICentre, Small Business and Entrepreneurship Center, Genesis Entrepreneurship Center, and WEtech Alliance. Thank you for putting our hashtag Founders First. For more information about our sponsors, please check out WEtech-Alliance.com/FoundersWeek. Today's session is hosted by WEtech Alliance. WEtech Alliance is one of 17 regional innovation centers funded by the province of Ontario, serving the Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent regions. We provide entrepreneurs with business services, training, mentorship, and strategic connections to help bring new ideas to market, scale to the next level, and build a dynamic culture and a community of innovation. The WEtech mission is to help start and grow tech and tech-enabled companies and champion innovation in the Windsor, Essex, and Chatham-Kent region. To learn more about what we do and how we can help you, please register for the Leveraging the Windsor-Essex Entrepreneurship Support Ecosystem Workshop on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Now on to some housekeeping items. To be considerate and accommodate everyone attending today, we're doing things a bit differently this meetup by leveraging Zoom webinar. You might not be able to see all the attendees, but you have ample opportunity to engage with our guests during the Q&A section. Please feel free to use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your window screen to engage with session attendees and submit questions to our speakers today. You can also upvote the questions you want answers. Should you experience any technical difficulties, please send me a message in the chat box. This session will be recorded, and a video file, audio file, and relevant links will be available on WEtech Alliance's YouTube channel and included in the attendee follow-up email. We are also streaming the session live on WEtech Alliance's Facebook page. And finally, let's make sure everyone knows Founders Week YQG is where it's at. Be sure to share your hashtag Founders Week YQG experience on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, we have created custom shareable GIFs for the event to amplify your Instagram stories. In the GIF search bar, please look up WEtech Alliance to find these custom GIFs. Now, I would like to welcome our moderator, Sarah Haefling, on stage. Sarah is a 25-year-old entrepreneur who at the age of 24 started her own podcast, Made It Happen, to highlight the voices of female entrepreneurs. Since launching in May 2020, the podcast has grown to have thousands of downloads, many incredible sponsorships and partnerships, and has reached number 6 on Apple Podcasts' top entrepreneurship podcast charts in some countries, 36 in Canada, and top 40 in Greece, and top 50 in Mexico. She has interviewed female business owners and change makers all across Canada and the United States, including Forbes' top 30 under 30, influencers, mental health advocates, local business owners, and more. From starting her own podcast, she then went on to start her own podcasting agency, WEtech Co. With her background in business and marketing, she now helps businesses and individuals launch and grow podcasts they are proud of. Sarah was the top winner in the Take Your Shot event, a pitch competition for young entrepreneurs, and the top winner in the Venture Women Final Pitch competition for female entrepreneurs. On behalf of the Founders Week YQG team, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And on today's Fireside Chat, please welcome Kat, founder of Shock Bead Co, who will be sitting down with us to share her founder story, exploring what drove her to start her business, discuss any trials and tribulations she's faced along the way, and how she hopes to positively impact the industry she is in. Kat is an Indigenous creator and entrepreneur. She is Cree and Turtle Clan, with her family originating from James Bay in Northern Ontario. Her formal education comes from the University of Windsor, earning a Bachelor of Commerce, Honors Business Administration. Her cultural ties to her community sparked her first entrepreneurial journey 16 years ago. Culture Shock Jewelry began as a hobby that specialized in selling Indigenous jewelry art, crafts like authentic handmade moccasins. Her desire to find a larger creative space for her business prompted her newest venture, Shock Bead Co. In the middle of the global pandemic, she recognized a growing need for quality jewelry and craft supplies in Windsor. Along with her love for shiny things, she opened a bead and crystal store in downtown Windsor, celebrating her grand opening this year's Halloween weekend. Kat, I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. And to start things off, how about we go with a few rapid fire questions? Are you all set?
No, but let's do it.
Perfect. What has been the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, you started with that one. I always have a hard time, and it's supposed to be rapid fire questions, but stay on top of your books. Number one thing as an entrepreneur, don't fall behind.
Great piece of advice. What business do you wish you had founded?
After some serious thought about it, Amazon. I don't think that amount of wealth should be in the power of a small portion of people.
A successful entrepreneur.
Oh, this is what I was just joking about at the beginning. Honestly, I think about a good friend of mine, Anissa Noakes, who owns the Urban Art Market. Not in addition to that, she owns several other businesses, and I really look up to her.
Amazing. And what's something that you wouldn't be able to live without?
Oh, coffee. Coffee, friends, family. Without them, I really would not be where I am with my businesses.
I love that. So now to dive into it, do we want to start with having you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your company?
So I'm originally from Toronto. That was where I was born and raised. My family has ties to the James Bay area, and I did get to live up in the northern part of Ontario for 5 years in when I was a youth, which was like a fantastic experience for me. One, living in a very remote community, but being tied, growing better connections with my family have really carried forward my business. Just those connections in terms of hunting and resources. When we talk about the cultural components of my jewelry business, a lot of people want to learn about Indigenous crafts, and because I have a connection to my community, which not all Indigenous people have, it really empowers me to share my culture. So having that part of my life up north, I'm super appreciative of. I eventually made my way back to Toronto for high school, and then made it my way down to Windsor, the most southern part of Canada, where there's no snow. But I moved here for university. I took business at the University of Windsor, and I never left. I'm still here, and I love it here.
Amazing. And, following along with that too, what is it then that led you to start your business? And, a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey in the beginning.
So a lot of my work experience is in the hospitality industry. And so when I was in Toronto and working there, I worked at a lot of different restaurants, and I have I have a lot of passion for like service industry, and I really enjoyed working in restaurants, but what I didn't enjoy was working for other people. I think that was what was the big drive, is that I knew that one day I would want to open up my own restaurant, and I was like, I need the skills in order to be able to do that. Which is why I took business. And so just so happens that I ended up making my way down to Windsor, and then focusing on strategy and entrepreneurship at the university was really exciting, because there was, at the time, there was a growing support for entrepreneurs. And that was when I had enrolled in summer company, which really got me started. So even though I had a keen interest in hospitality, I had always been doing culture shock jewelry as a hobby on the side. And so when I had to propose a business plan, I was like, I'm going to go with what I know right now, something that's easy, that I can do. And that was the beginning. That was when I registered my business through the summer company program. And it's been fantastic ever since.
Amazing. Well, there's definitely a lot I want to jump into with that. And just to start off a little bit, if you had advice for another founder starting a business, what would that be?
Reach out to all of the supports, particularly if you're in this region. I can't speak highly enough to all of the hubs, the entrepreneurship hubs in the city, and the supports that they provide. Even my opportunity to come here today is because I had participated in a workshop with WEtech Alliance, which was focused on Indigenous entrepreneurs. And so building up those connections and making friends in this community has been amazing, because the support is always there. Every time I have a new adventure, there are always friends to help spread the word. And that those networking opportunities that have come about because of the organizations in the city have been great. So that is like the first thing. And a lot of the programs and resources are free. When you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of capital, and it really is one of the best ways to get involved.
Yes, we're definitely fortunate to have so many great resources around this area for businesses and entrepreneurs. And you talked a little bit about starting up the business there, and then do you want to talk a bit about how it's evolved since you started it up, and especially over this pandemic and opening your own store?
So culture shock jewelry was like a typical, think like craft shows and craft vendors and like church group kind of things. And like, I was there. I was at all of the events that were possible in Windsor, just trying to navigate and figure out what this community was about. And there was a lot of momentum at the time to support local handmade, which was great. And my involvement with that, at one point I was with the Walkerville Artists Co-op, and then Urban Art Market came about. And I think that was one of the biggest launches in terms of growth for my jewelry business, because we actually had a full-fledged retail shop dedicated to solely handmade products that people wanted to get behind. That was incredible. And it gave me a home base to send customers to purchase my jewelry, because I had an online website, but it wasn't the way that I have it built up now. And at the time, I think Etsy was a big platform for sellers, but it's incredibly competitive. So that being said, I had Urban Art Market, and then there became other opportunities for me to open up in other shops. And a lot of museum gift shops were interested in carrying my jewelry. And I started growing, and then I started getting more national attention in Canada, and it was really exciting. But those opportunities largely came about because of social media, because of Instagram and Facebook, which brought me into programs with Manitoba Mucklucks, who had the Story Boot Artists program. So it's like Manitoba Mucklucks is a huge brand. I mean, they're carried at Holt Renfrew. They're known a bit more as a luxury brand in terms of footwear. And so that was exciting. It led up to a lot more opportunities, eventually getting approached by Vanity Fair to have some advertising space in their magazine. And that was Vanity Fair UK. But it's just phenomenal the way that a handmade business can be supported with the right opportunities. But you have to be able to put yourself out there. and it's a risk. It's always a risk. But because my workshop had grown so much and I needed space because my apartment was overrun with craft supplies, I was looking to rent out a loft or something, somewhere where I could do continue to do my jewelry making. And that was when I happened across a storefront with a retail space. So there's tons of office space and storage space in the basement, but I was like, there's a bonus of a retail space here. And the bead company that I run was always small, and just sort of through Facebook groups. And our primary customers were Indigenous folks in remote communities that don't have access to like a Michael's that we have in our city. And so I was like, you know what, let's just do it. I had no plan. I was just kind of like, it was right beside my friend's store, the art supply, Beatnik Art Supplies. And I was like, why not? And then I just went for it. We got the keys in January of this year, and I was like, it's gonna be, my estimate then was that we wouldn't be able to actually open until summer, but because we had already had a customer base online, it was enough to sustain everything that we're doing. And I got the workshop space that I needed for my jewelry company. So it was like a natural progression of things I didn't really plan for, but I'm really excited that they came about the way that they did.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's definitely a lot of exciting things going on, and I'm so excited for everything that you have coming up. And one of the things you touched on there too was sort of getting that sort of national audience for your business as well. And do you have any advice for founders or entrepreneurs in sort of starting and getting some attention in the, like, especially with social media, really getting out there? And you said put yourself out there. Is there sort of any advice you have in terms of that aspect of it?
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about how I jumped into this meeting and I didn't realize that we were already live. But for me, I just threw a needle because I was fidgeting. Sorry. I was fidgeting with the needle and here it is. Okay. A really dangerous needle. But anyway. People really want to be able to connect with the brand. They want to know what you're about. They want to know who you are. And I know that for my business, I excel in face-to-face interactions, which is why I had done so many like shows in the city, and I was always out there trying to engage with people. And some people translate better in social media. You get several takes. You can, record yourself 5 times and you'll get the right take to be able to like tell your story and your brand. But people want to know who you are. If I go to your website and I can't figure out like where you're located, something a little bit about the owner, any of this information, chances are I'm going to be wary because I don't know who this is. I don't see it on your social media. Like there has to be something there that talks about who you are specifically. Most people know that it's not just myself, it's my family. My mom is a big supporter of the work that we're doing, but she likes to be behind the scenes, and that's okay. But I've never been able to do any of this without my family. And one point with the jewelry business, my grandmother was a big part of that as well. She's not sewing anymore, but when we first started making moccasins, she was a big part of that story. And so figure out what your story is and how you want to share that with others. My strengths in person, what are your strengths?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's a great piece of advice. And, I think a big thing with entrepreneurship too is really learning from others who have been there and sort of, can talk about the challenges or maybe mistakes that they've made. And is there, advice that you would have given yourself to, towards avoiding a mistake or maybe a lesson you learned along the way?
We could probably go back to that bookkeeping thing. Because I had business background, and with Culture Shock Jewelry, I was more on top of my books than I have been with the storefront. And the storefront aspect of my bookkeeping, I'm catching up with myself. So I needed like a reminder to myself when I was younger, like stay on top of those books. Because the jewelry business wasn't necessarily situated, like because of the way that it worked, I had other people managing my sales and recording my stuff, so which was a bit easier. But now that I'm in store, I'm like, okay. But another like in a non-practical sense, really being able to figure out who your network of support is going, who they are, figuring out that, whether it's friends, whether it's family, because tough times get hard. Like, you know, sometimes people get sick, things happen. There's always changes in life that you cannot be prepared for. And if there's someone that you can lean on, you're going to be better prepared for when those things happen. I've had a lot of water damage in this place, just in terms of leaks, unexpected leaks that the landlord takes care of right away. But, you know, trying to manage the stress of that, working a full-time job and all of these things, I'm like, okay, who can I turn to? Who's going to help me? And you have to be able to ask for that help, but people are willing to support you if you know who they are.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's definitely so important to have that support system. And you talked about there too, you know, there's always going to be those obstacles coming. There's going to be those challenges. What is it that really keeps you motivated and keeps you going, you know, during those times as an entrepreneur?
When I opened up the store, it was a different type of experience when I started running into these obstacles, because I felt much more pressure on myself because this is under my name. And I had to take a moment and really take a step back. And I'm like, these are the things that people try and warn you about, to like take a step back, to breathe. You're going to be okay. And I've attended a lot of other sessions where I'm hearing role models that I look up to on how they dealt with obstacles. And I really try to take that advice to heart, because I was putting too much pressure on myself. And at the end of the day, I'm okay. At the end of the day, I'm fortunate enough to still have my health. I still have a roof over my head, you know, food in my belly, and like the priorities of my life are still taken care of. And anything else I can handle if I just take a moment to breathe. That stress can be very real, and the perceived pressures that we put on ourselves can be overwhelming. So to sit back and reflect on that was really important. So it's like, for myself, it's a self-awareness of when I'm actually experiencing stress. And I realized, you know, I haven't eaten, I haven't drinking anything today. Like, let's take a minute here. And I do talk a lot about self-care, and sometimes I forget about that for myself. But yeah, you gotta be able to do that to get through those hard times. And when you're feeling better, and once you've eaten, you'll be motivated again to, you know, okay, I got this. This is not as big of a deal as I thought it was. And then you can approach it again. So.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think taking that time, and I think, you know, that's definitely great advice, because it definitely can be very up and down as an entrepreneur. So just having those reminders are definitely so important. And I think another thing with entrepreneurs too is there's always so many ideas, you know, different businesses, different things to go with. And so how do you know, whether to really stick with that idea or business idea, on sort of when to, you know, move on to something else?
Oh yeah, trial and error is like a big thing. I mean, in the business context, it can be tricky, because ultimately you need a bottom line of making profit, right? You really need to be able to take some risk, and you need to be financially secure enough to take that risk, because I would never suggest anybody be taking large risks when, like, don't put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak. But you're not going to grow unless you push yourself. And I pushed myself to open up the store. And that was always my ultimate goal. That is why I went to school. But I took the plunge because I was like, there's opportunity in the time. Like, a lot of storefronts were closing, a lot of spaces were becoming available. And I was like, if I don't do this now, when will I do it? I had a 5-year plan for myself in terms of my personal growth. And I'm like, this aligns with what I want to do. This makes sense. But getting distracted by things popping up on my screen. you're never gonna know unless you try, right? And I'm the type of person is that I want experiences, I want stories to tell. And if I look back on this in a year's time, I'm like, I tried to open a store and it didn't work out, then that's okay. But I could also look back and be like, I opened a store and wow, I made an amazing decision. So yeah, like how else are you gonna know unless you try? And I felt a lot of appreciation from my friends, and they're like, Kat's the kind of person who will actually go and do it. And I know that that's not for everybody, but to get into the entrepreneurship game, you got to have you got to be able to take some risks. So.
Absolutely. You don't want to look back and regret not trying. So I definitely agree. And we are starting to come up on time here. So I'm going to start taking some questions from the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask Kat, please feel free to enter it into the chat here. And so the first one we have here is, what is the hardest decision you've made so far?
When we were prepping for this with Sarah, I asked them, what are they going to wear today? No, I'm just kidding. That wasn't the hardest decision. Okay, sorry. Read the question again.
The hardest decision you've made so far.
So with the opening of the store and selecting my products, I did have a moment where I was kind of getting carried away with dollar signs in terms of, oh my gosh, I could sell these things and there's a really good profit margin here. And I had to really sit and think about it. And it wasn't until I had been mulling it over myself and kind of at odds with myself. And it wasn't until I actually said it out loud that I was like, I can't carry these products. And what it was is that I would be culturally appropriating. When I had finally decided I'm not going to be carrying these products, that wasn't a hard decision to make, but like to realize that I was almost kind of getting swept away in the idea that my business could be something that I don't want to be. I don't want to be fake. I don't want to be cultural appropriating anything. And I need to pick and select products that are meaningful to my overall business sense and not those dollar signs.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to what you had mentioned before, taking that step back and looking at it, with that clear perspective. So I definitely agree. And we have another question here is, what's the most important thing you're working on right now? And how are you making that happen?
I did not realize how much of a mentor that I am to my niece. My niece is 7 or just turned 8. She just turned 8 this past week, but how much she is watching me. And when she's in the store, the things that she's seeing. And I'm getting emotional thinking about it because when I was her age, I was also introduced to this type of entrepreneurial life by my mother and grandmother. And so I'm seeing this cycle of positive role models. And anyways, it's really important, and to actually really recognize and reflect on the fact that I now have someone looking up to me. I want to be the best that I can for her. So, sorry.
No, I love that. I think that's amazing, and that's great to hear. And we always need those role models. So that's great to hear. And the next question here is, who is your biggest inspiration that motivates you to keep pushing forward?
Oh, my mom and my grandmother. They are the matriarchs in our family. And if you've ever had the opportunity to meet my grandmother, you would just meet the most vivacious, full of life woman who just can light up a room. And she worked, she was sewing until in recent years. She's 94 now. And she had to stop sewing because she could no longer physically, sew through leather. And it's a lot harder than, say, like sewing by hand with fabric and stuff. But she had an incredibly strong work ethic, and I always saw that growing up, and seeing the sacrifices that my mom had done for her education. They worked really hard. And we were never in a position of privilege to say financially. And so I really had to earn what I have now through hard work. And so I'm motivated by how they were able to provide and take care of family.
Great to hear.
I did not expect to get so emotional this afternoon.
No, it's good. That's the authentic side, right? Okay, let's check here. What opportunities do you see to build momentum around the WindsorEssex startup scene?
I see a lot of opportunity for Indigenous business here in the city, because we need more of it. And I know that a big part of the support that I receive is that people support me because I'm Indigenous, and they see, you know, myself and let's say other racialized people opening businesses that need support and deserve support, whether it's because of social movements or just the connection to our culture. If Windsor could be a major hub for Indigenous business, and I don't see enough of it here, and I'd like to see more of that. And so in terms of momentum, I look at other cities and communities that have, you know, strong ties to the Indigenous tourism, Ontario, and I'm losing my train of thought. But if we had something like that here, we would be able to tell more of the story and the history of how WindsorEssex became to be. We did a land acknowledgement at the beginning of this, and we talk about the Three Fires Confederacy, but what does that mean? And so I just imagine if there were walking tours and somebody came and talked about that history from an Indigenous perspective, like that would be fantastic. I've thought about running that business, but I'm doing some other stuff right now. But there's definitely big momentum and interest in people wanting to learn about our cultures. And so that's what I see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I would love to see that one day. So next business then, yeah. Amazing. And let's check the chat here. Do we have any other questions coming in? You can also upvote the questions as well. And do you do voice?
They're just laughing. Kat opens another business.
Oh, amazing. Let's see here. So we have a question. I'm a single 58-year-old female entrepreneur fighting cancer for the second time. I lost my job 2 days after diagnosis with a company that suffered greatly during the pandemic. And so while bootstrapping and running her own business gives her control and how she works through the treatments on days off feeling unwell, it's incredibly challenging. So how did you meet the challenge of lack of benefits and support system during leaner times?
So a part of what actually really prompted what I was able to do here was turning to grants and bursaries. And because I was fortunate enough that I straddle like two different areas, well, actually three, I should say, maybe more. I'm just thinking about all the different grants that I was able to obtain for my business to help pay for other costs. So I tapped into the grant that was available for women in this region, and I forget the name of the grant specifically. I'm sure someone would be able to throw the name of that in the chat. I tapped into grants from the Arts Council in Ontario as an Indigenous artist. I tapped into grants just as specifically for Indigenous businesses. And so if you look to see what's available, depending on what it is you're doing, there's going to be other supports. And right now there have been a lot of supports put out by the government for small business. But in order to do those things, you you actually have to be like all in, right? Like you're registered with the HST, a registered business with the HST number, and then in some aspects actually taking on employees. And so that was when I was like, that was I started leveraging, because like last summer I was like, okay, I'm growing, I need to start doing these things if I want to take myself seriously. But because I did that, I was able to tap into things to help me gain the support that I needed. And then reaching out to my community, being a part of the Indigenous community here, in terms of my mental health and that part of my well-being, I really relied on the workshops and the counseling that was available to me, because I have bad days and I've had mental health ups and downs. And when I was feeling really down, I needed to be able to ask for support. So looking to resources that are free or cost efficient in the city, they're there, but you have to, you know, look for them and then let it be known that you need support, especially if you're going through, you know, your health should always be the #1 priority. And don't be afraid to ask for the support that you need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's definitely, you know, great to know and very helpful for people. And I see that someone has put in that into the chat as well, a link there. So thank you for that. And you talked a bit about, you know, you had the goal of opening a storefront. And so do you do goal setting around your business, and how do you go about doing that?
I come up with all kinds of goals and plans, and then I don't do half of them. But I think that that's a part of the process, right? And so I set out a lot of ideas for myself, but I've always tried to like realistically look at timeframes. So I mentioned earlier that I had like a 5-year plan for myself. And what actually prompted that was the fact that I was like, okay, I was just thinking like all the countries that I would like to visit. And I wrote them all down. And I was like, I want to visit 10 different countries. And I was like, realistically, if I can afford these every year, that's the next 10 years of my life. Wow. And I was like, okay, if I actually want to visit all these places, I need to get on that. I need to be able to figure out how I can afford to do these trips. Because a lot of the countries that I want to visit are not like the backpacking, you know, easy kind of places. Like I want to go and like tour the mountains of New Zealand and see and stay at all the amazing hotels in Japan and then Iceland. And it's not quite the same as like getting an all-inclusive package for $500 to Cuba. These are very expensive. And so, but that helped me kind of like put into context on how I wanted to goal set for myself. And so with the business, it's the same thing. I'm like, these are the things that I would like to do. And I have them all written down and I put them on the wall. Like I'm literally like, I need to be able to see this. I need these to be in my face, because if I don't have them there, I'm going to forget about them. And that my apartment at home was like that for a while. I'm like, these are all the books I need to read. These are the languages I want to learn. These are the places I want to go. And they're a reminder. One of the things that happen a lot when people come to my booth, they're like, oh, I own so much jewelry, but I never wear it. And I ask them, how do you display it? Is it out in a pretty jewelry box, you know, on your dresser or wherever, or is it tucked away in a drawer where you're just never going to think about it? And they're like, no, you're right. I'm like, just buy a nice jewelry display that can hang a few necklaces and not a lot, and then rotate your pieces. And I promise you'll wear everything by the end of the year. I don't know how many people have taken my advice, but I know it works for me because I also own a lot of jewelry.
Yes. No, I think that's great. I think that's, you know, especially that's sort of, you know, with vision boards and sort of having that goal right there in front of you. I think that's definitely great to, you know, keep in mind and have there in front of you. And what would be your best piece of advice for a founder or entrepreneur just starting out?
So there was the bit that I was saying earlier about reaching out to support, but then really figuring out your story, which I'm just going to like reiterate all the points that I made. Maybe I'll think of something new. But yeah, figuring out your story, figuring out how you want to tell it. I'm horrible at taking photos. I'm horrible at like social media. And I know people are like, oh, I love your stuff, but I had to hire people to come in and help me and do that. And I know Sarah and I have had conversations before that it's important to hire people that you may not be the strongest hire people to help you with the things you're not the greatest at, but also take time to hire people who can give you feedback on what you do think is doing well. And people will always be able to give criticism and critiques and support, and not even necessarily having to hire people, but finding networking events that you can discuss these things to see how well your ideas are received, right? Yeah, but social media is a really important thing for businesses. I know that within the past few months here, we are seeing a lot of anti-social media, like people wanting to push away from it, but how else are you going to reach your customers if you're not online? It can really make or break a business. And if you have a strong website or a strong presence somewhere that you can direct people to, then it's going to empower your business.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to this networking event too. So if you want to talk more, we can talk there. I'm assuming this is Yvonne putting all these awesome tidbits in the chat. So thank you. Oh, is it not? If it's not Yvonne, I'm sorry.
Well, that concludes all of the time we have today for the Q&A. So thank you everyone for the great questions there.
Thank you so much, Kat and Sarah, for sharing your founder's journey with us today. So on behalf of Founders Week YQG, we can't wait to celebrate your continued growth and success. We have a quick survey for all our attendees today. Please click the link in the chat box to provide feedback for this session. This will enter you for a session giveaway to win a $50 Windsor card. The more sessions you provide feedback for, the more entries you have in the final draw. And before we close the event, I just ask attendees that we take a quick screenshot. I apologize. I am from my Mac computer and I'm the worst at it, so please bear with me. Okay, all right. And let's just do a quick 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you. Yeah, and thank you for joining us today. Please don't forget to check out our schedule for upcoming events. Next up, we have Looking to Raise Money session with investor Mike Labiak at 3 p.m. Also, I want to ensure that you don't miss out on Founders Week YQG Town Hall on Wednesday at 6 p.m. and Failure Night on Friday at 6 p.m. So please make sure you add them to your schedule so you don't miss out. And in case you missed it, Founders Week YQG is offering a week of perks while quantities last. So please check out the Fun and Freebies tab to learn more. There's free coffee, donuts from Plant Joy, so please make sure you check them out. And thank you everyone for joining us today.